Hi everybody, my name is Rachel Levin, and today I will be doing a presentation on the band Metallica. So first I just have a brief history of the band. It was formed in 1981 in Los Angeles, California by James Hetfield, who was the vocalist and guitarist, and Lars Ulrich, the drummer. Metallica would definitely fall under the heavy metal genre of music, and was easily probably one of the best and most influential metal bands of the 80s. They founded thrash metal. They were actually inducted into the Hollywood Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on April 4th, 2009. And just as like a fun fact that I found out about the band, they were actually the first band to ever play a concert on all 7 continents as of 2013, because they actually played a concert in Antarctica for a group of scientists. So yeah. So interestingly about the musical style of Metallica is, as I mentioned before, they actually were one of the founders of the subgenre thrash metal, which is something really interesting because what thrash metal is basically is a very sped up version of heavy metal. There's a lot of guitar shredding and high-pitched guitar solos. And it's also referred to as speed metal sometimes, but I personally prefer thrash. I think it sounds a little cooler. And the other really cool thing about Metallica is they just had a very cult-like audience, and they could sell out their performances without really needing to air on the radio or be on MTV. And per the book, actually, according to Brian Slagle, who started Metal Blade Records, Metallica really created a new form of music, and Rolling Stone called it a marvel of precisely channeled aggression. And something that I also thought was pretty neat was just that Metallica really is referred to as one of the founding fathers of thrash metal because thrash or speed metal didn't exist before them. And they really just sped up already fast and loud music and made it faster and louder to create this new subgenre, which I think really contributed to their uniqueness as a band because their music was unlike any other at the time. So on this slide, I've included some musical elements for the band, and starting with dynamics, since Metallica's music is generally loud, which makes sense because they are heavy metal or thrash metal, and I definitely would say that heavy metal is probably best described as being loud. And I'd say the interesting thing about Metallica's songs, though, is that the sound in most of their tracks generally change. And I think a really great example of this is in the song Fade to Black, because it actually starts off as being really quiet during the beginning part of the song, and then it gets much louder. It's also one of my favorite songs. And then moving on to harmonies. So there are lots of harmonies in Metallica songs, which is just created by different notes being played at the same time. And I think a really great example of harmonies in Metallica's music is in their song Nothing Else Matters, where Kirk actually plays 2 different notes at the same time and creates this really beautiful harmony in the beginning. And then moving on to melody, so almost every single one of Metallica's songs have a melody, and they create their melodies in their guitar riffs that are really like frequently repeated throughout the song. And I think a really great example of melody being used in their music is in the song Enter Sandman, which is another one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs. Where the guitar riff that is introduced at the start of the song is repeated during choruses and then at the beginning of every verse. And then for my last section, for tempo, most of Metallica's songs are going to be really fast, like I said before, just because of the genre. And definitely also going to be very loud, as I also mentioned earlier. And something interesting about the tempo is that the beat from the drums are going to be as fast and as exciting as like the accelerated strumming that they do on guitar. And I think a really great song to use as an example for their like mastering of tempo is actually in the song Master of Puppets, which is another great song and one I actually learned to play from the game Guitar Hero. So yeah. And finally, as far as fashion trends go, I wouldn't say that Metallica as a band had any specific fashion trends that really that they personally started, but I'm gonna just relate it back to like heavy metal as a fashion trend because they are part of heavy metal after all. So listed here, I have body mods, makeup, black clothes, leather jackets, long hair, and bullet belts, which I'll delve into in a moment. And I have a really cool picture here of some metalheads. I would definitely say that metalhead culture is probably one of my favorites, just because I think it looks pretty cool. Um, so basically, what heavy metal fashion is just like this really specific style of dressing up and involving lots of body modifications, usually like darker-ish makeup, long hairstyles, and kind of so on, taken on by the fans of the genre heavy metal, of course. They're also called metalheads, as I said before, headbangers. And I think the style has gone through a lot of changes, probably since like the 70s. But I would say that there are some certain elements that have remained really constant, which are the ones I listed before. So black clothing, long hair, leather jackets. Um, and I would definitely say that the clothing that is specifically associated with heavy metal has its roots in like biker, rocker, and like leather subcultures. Um, and kind of relating it back, I guess, to Metallica or like thrash metal specifically. I think it has some of its own distinctions in metalhead culture, and some of those influences would be of like kind of more modern military clothing, and I would say also like the Vietnam War. You can really see that taking influence in the style, specifically with like the band. They kind of adorned themselves with like bullet belts around their waists that they wore on stage, which was really similar to like the new wave of British heavy metal. Similar to like, I think a really great example would be the band Motorhead. Um, but yeah, I would say those are the main fashion trends in heavy metal.